It is the day that changed the country forever. Ground Zero, Shanksville, the Pentagon. America remembering 23 years after the September 11th attacks. Tonight, how the presidential candidates came together after a night that just went off the rails.
They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
You're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name-calling.
Plus, how the White House is reacting tonight to this moment, or to a moment involving President Biden. Why did he put on a Trump hat today? Also this evening is the October surprise right before our own eyes. I will explain why it very well could involve your holiday shopping. And landfall in Louisiana this evening. We are live as Hurricane Francine hits the Gulf. Much to get to this day after the big debate. Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. "23 years ago on this day, the unimaginable, America under attack. September 11th, 2001, the day that changed this country for 2 decades now. Just down the road from us here in Washington moments ago, the solemn scene at the Pentagon, the commander-in-chief and the vice president at a wreath-laying ceremony. In Shanksville this afternoon, the annual somber visit to the memorial in the serene Pennsylvania countryside. The tribute to those we lost on 9/11 beginning this morning at Ground Zero. Everyday Americans together with those who want to be the most powerful in this country. Fulfilling the vow that we as a country will never forget those we lost on one of America's darkest days. That's just some of the scene this morning. And would you look at this? At Ground Zero, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, lined up right there, nearly right next to each other, separated in the middle by a former presidential candidate, Michael Bloomberg. Harris and Trump seen shaking hands at one point after their bitter debate last evening. A moment of seriousness after a night that was full of the unserious. The first and potentially only presidential debate between Trump and Harris. Take immigration and the conversation around that last night as an example. As we have reported for years here at NewsNation, the crisis at the border is real and it is very complex. For example, encounters by the millions at the southwest border and deadly fentanyl entering the country. But last night, Vice President Harris chose to use her time to not fully address the critical issue, instead using the border to bait Trump successfully.
And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies.
First, let me respond as to the rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies.
And it only spun more out of control from there. Trump then using his time to talk about dead dogs. Harris about her sudden admiration of Dick Cheney.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats.
I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney.
Now, there are real issues like immigration and the border in this country today. We were reminded, for example, of issue number one this morning, the economy. The government reported inflation rose 2.5% over the past year. That is the lowest it has been since February of 2021. But the issues you did not hear about last night, for example, include housing. Affordability is the worst it's been in decades. Today, though, a little bit of hope potentially as mortgage rates hit their lowest levels since February of 2023. Nothing last night about the debt. By the way, we just learned hours before the debate that we racked up some $1.9 trillion in debt in just the last 11 months alone. Nothing either on education in America as it relates to our children, just passing references of Social Security and Medicare, which, by the way, will need an overhaul in the upcoming decade. The serious and the non-serious, all on full display over the last 24 hours. 55 days to go until Election Day. Joining me tonight here on the Hill, Ashley Davis is a former official in the George W. Bush White House. Scott Bolden, former chairman of the D.C. Democratic Party, NewsNation political contributor. Aaron Perini is a Republican strategist. And Kurt Bardella, NewsNation contributor, Democratic strategist. Hello to you all. Nice to have you all in. We got a little bit of sleep last night. Just a little bit of, here we are tonight. Any objections with what I just laid out?
No.
And sort of what we saw over the last 24 hours?
I think it was good.
That's a good summary.
Kind of where we are. Democrats are giddy.
Yes.
Republicans think nothing really changed last night, though you think there were missed opportunities, even from Kamala Harris.
Yeah, I think, again, both sides had missed opportunities. I think for Kamala Harris, not talking about things like gun safety, especially in classrooms, especially in the wake of the most recent mass shooting, there's an opportunity there to connect with voters in a way that is not seen, per se, as partisan as some of the issues that they talked about in the debate. And I think Donald Trump missed a lot of opportunities by just taking, as we've all talked about over the last 24 hours, taking the bait, especially when we're talking about his key signature issue, immigration. He should have bypassed the entire conversation about crowd sizes and gone right to immigration, and he couldn't help himself.
Well, he did try to live in that space. He did try to live in that space, but he wanted to talk about Haitian immigrants eating dogs or pets and what have you, which was like the least serious part of the immigration
When I walked into this studio, you didn't even say hello. You were just so giddy to talk about last night. Why?
Because I think she didn't miss any points. I thought it was a brilliant debate. I've said to you and others that she was going to prepare for this debate like preparing for a criminal case or a criminal prosecution. Opening, introducing herself, cross and direct, is baiting Donald Trump as well as laying out her vision. She did touch on a number of substantive issues, but in the debate, it gets kind of tough. And then the closing argument, if you will. So that's what she did last night. And looked presidential, too.
You don't think much changed. Why?
I don't think much changed because what the American people saw was, one, they were looking for more from Kamala Harris. They wanted depth from her, and they didn't get that in her policy positions. And two, they saw the Donald Trump that they've known. When it comes to polling, all of that you saw from Donald Trump, that's baked in. People already know that. They want a reason to vote for Kamala. That's that 30% you're seeing in polling right now who's like, I need to hear more. They want a reason. She didn't really give that to them.
If you're not spiking the football, though, some might say, well, that's Republicans just trying to put a spin on it.
Maybe. I mean, this is why I don't buy into ABC did a bad job. I mean, if you're criticizing the moderators, you're losing, which I agree with a lot. But however, what I'm concerned about is that he lost potentially some of the suburban women.
Yeah. How so?
I just think that I don't think his abortion stance was probably something that he could have been stronger on, and I think that I just don't think I also think he makes people mad.
So here was part of Kamala Harris on the issues. One of the big questions: why did you change so many of those positions? And here was her response. Donald Trump. We'll talk about it on the other side.
My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down.
She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota.
So if you're worried about suburban women in some cases, what about some of those potentially undecided voters who say, wait a minute, I didn't hear anything from Kamala Harris on why she's flip-flopping all over the place?
Well, I think that's the platitude she was going for. She wasn't trying to have a serious, in-depth conversation. And I'll give grace to this. 2 minutes is not a lot of time to be able to give a definitive policy position. But she didn't do that. Instead, she would use the first minute and a half to kind of give the larger, more flowing, beautiful, optimistic picture without any actual real meat to the sandwich, and then say, oh, yeah, and then Donald Trump, I'm going to poke this bruise on you for whatever topic she wanted to try and get him off topic.
But Aaron, and I'm on your side, but he took the bait. I mean, he should have just answered.
There's
the
no
question
arguing that. Yeah, totally.
He should have answered the question on what's happening in this country.
Everybody knows you can also do the thing, which is you answer the question you wish was asked. How many times do we do that?
Exactly.
You aren't getting a lot of substantive issues covered by Donald Trump, one, and what they were going for.
But no one's confused on where he stands on any policy.
There's only so much time in the debate.
Exactly. There's
so
no confusion.
Who watches the debate? Both sides are baked in. And then you have that sliver of voters who are on the fence, who you're trying to convince chance to either fall left or right. And I think she gave them enough to fall left to the Democrats.
All right, joining us now live from here in Washington up on Capitol Hill, the Republican congressman from the state of Pennsylvania, where last night's debate was held, Congressman Dan Muser. Congressman, thanks for being back with us here on the Hill.
Blake, great to be with you.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Was last night a missed opportunity?
Well, I mean, last night, many were expecting Kamala Harris to have a train wreck. The train wreck didn't occur. But what we didn't expect was that David Muir and the other host to be stating things that were, I think, extremely inappropriate. For David Muir to step in and say that crime is being reduced and the data supports that, and to try to wrongfully inject himself and then state something that's categorically incorrect, and I have the data and the numbers, was something that was pretty unexpected. So I think the American people came away from thinking that, first of all, Vice President Harris only offered platitudes, no policy, and the president was taking things, President Trump, that is, the former president, was taking things quite seriously. Of course, he broke off a couple of times that the media, plays over and over. But for the most part, you really think he was taking a plan for strength? She offered platitudes.
You really think he was taking things, the whole of it, seriously? Here was, for example, and there's questions today, Congressman, which Ashley just brought up. Why did he take the bait? I want to give you one example, and I'll get your reaction on the other side.
Yeah.
What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit.
I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country.
Congressman, you know this, I know this, but for our audience here on NewsNation and listening to us on SiriusXM, that was the trigger point to go at him on Wharton, and it was the second she put it out there, he took the bait, and that wasn't the only example, and I wonder if he's doing that now, why the American people should feel as if he's solid enough to be the commander-in-chief for the next 4 years.
Okay. He had a very conservative, pro-growth economic plan that was laid out in detail. And by the way, it includes the Government Efficiency Committee, okay, headed up by Musk. Okay, so no, his plan is pro-growth, it's competitive tax rates, it's pro-private sector, but it's also limited government. Kamala Harris's plan is the exact opposite. Heavy spending, high levels of regulations, socialized medicine, a continued assault on American energy, and all kinds of subsidies for the Green New Deal.
Let me ask you real quick because you're in Pennsylvania. One is going to drive
deficits.
Let me ask you real quick because you're in Pennsylvania, and we know that fracking has been talked about as a huge issue. When I look at what's important to voters in Pennsylvania, 51% say the economy. And I wonder, Congressman, with it being your backyard, if you think it's as big of an issue as is being talked about, or maybe not so much.
It's a huge issue. Farmers who are landowners, the royalties that come in from natural gas, many who believe in green energies. I mean, it's the most minimal level of carbon emissions. There's so many positives to fracking and to natural gas, to Pennsylvania and to our country. And she has said several times she's going to ban it. Heck, she sued the Obama administration because they were planning the frack and some offshore drilling. Look, if she doesn't ban it, which maybe she won't be able to, she'll overregulate it, overtax it, just like the Biden administration has tried to do, because they care about ideology, not outcomes.
Congressman Dan Muser from the state of Pennsylvania. We got to leave it there, sir. Thanks for being back with us once again here on the Hill.
Okay. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Yep, you got it. Still to come here over the next 45 minutes or so. Why did President Biden put on a Donald Trump hat earlier today? Believe it or not, the White House says there is a reason for this right here. Good deed or cleanup on aisle 46? We'll talk about it. Plus, the October surprise that could be right before our eyes. I will explain why a major strike could be around the corner and why retailers are already talking about your holiday shopping as a result of all this. And a live look right now at the Gulf. it is feeling the effects of Hurricane Francine. We are live in Louisiana as that storm makes landfall. Thanks for joining us tonight here on The Hill. I'm Blake Berman. We are back in 4 minutes. All right, welcome back here to The Hill on NewsNation. If there happens to be an October surprise in the election, could it actually not be a surprise at all and be right in front of us right now? We know that container cargo coming into this country right now jumped the price, or the amount of it jumped basically 13% last month compared to the year before. Now, the sudden rush is in part due to front-running a looming strike. As the head of the International Longshoremen's Association, that's the largest union of maritime workers, could soon hit the picket line in just a few weeks.
The ILA most definitely will hit the streets on October 1st if we don't get the kind of contract we deserve.
All right, so let me walk you through why this is such a big deal. So this is the ILA, the Longshoremen's Association. They work at the ports basically starting all the way up at Boston, down to Miami, across Florida, and out to New Orleans. There's 13 of them that could potentially be impacted or at least be involved with this strike. Now, what would that mean for containers? Remember, this is stuff that brings goods into the country that you buy and that you pay for. Right now, that port traffic from those sites brings in about 20 million containers a year, or basically 55,000 containers per day. What's in a container? Those 20-foot containers or so? Here's one way to look at it. You could put 200 full-size mattresses in a container, 48,000 bananas, 50 to 60 refrigerators, give or take, or 400 flat-screen televisions, right? Now start multiplying that. Now, the strike could happen a month before the election, as I talked about, starting on October 1st. And we talk about the swing states all the time, right? One of those ports is in Georgia, Savannah, Georgia. And look at what it would mean if they go on strike there in Georgia. For example, $3.8 billion in taxes, they say, to the Georgia economy. The port there is the fourth busiest one in the United States. All right. Now, what are they asking for? These are the demands. It includes a 77% pay increase over 6 years and no automated terminals. Remember, with the UAW strike that we saw, they wanted pay increases in the 40 or 50% range. And again, automation was a big deal. Now, I mentioned holiday shopping, right? The National Retail Federation is already coming out, and here's what they say. For retailers, that means holiday shipments might not arrive on time. Could you imagine the scenario if there is a massive strike on October 1st involving the ports on the East Coast? Mick Mulvaney, former budget director, former White House chief of staff in the Trump administration, NewsNation contributor, come on in. I'm on to something here, right, Mick? You don't think this is nuts to talk about right now, and that this could be a big story here in a couple weeks?
You know, Berman, I have to give you credit. I don't know what you read in your free time, but the two stories you sent me were a National Retail Federation and FreightWaves.com. No one else is talking about this. This could really, really be a big deal. You're open about how is the October surprise right in front of us right now here on September 11th. The answer may be yes. My guess is that our Democrat friends in the panel tonight didn't know anything about this before tonight. I certainly didn't know much about it. But I got to tell you, they are not sitting comfortably right now. Because Democrats, they're supposed to be pro-labor, but if these longshoremen go out on strike on October 1st, the impacts on the economy a month before the election could be absolutely dramatic. It could be earth-shattering. It could be the type of thing that changes an outcome. That's correct.
And the National Retail Federation is already calling on the White House to get involved here. And you can imagine, Mick, if it gets to that point, the question is going to be, Madam Vice President, should they strike? If you're pro-union, should they strike or not?
It's a real uncomfortable situation for the Democrats. However, the longshoremen's political leverage is never going to be higher than October 1st. And you can imagine them going to the administration, who might be involved, could be involved. Joe Biden walked the picket line during the UAW thing, might start bringing down pressure on the ports to accept a deal so that there is no strike on October 1st. Because right now, the longshoremen, that language is pretty clear. They're striking. Unless they get a deal, they are striking on October 1st.
Yeah. You talk about real quick the pressure on the Democrats, but what would Donald Trump say? You know him as well as anyone.
He'd say that it was Biden's fault, that this should have been done a long time ago. They should have seen this coming. They told us back in 2021 that inflation was caused by supply chain bottlenecks. We had difficulty out of the port at Long Beach. They should have seen this one coming. If I had been president, we never would have had this problem. That's exactly what I'd say.
All right, Mick Mulvaney, former White House Chief of Staff.
By the way, Mick, Aaron and I knew about this.
We knew about this, Mick. We knew how you besmirch our names like this.
Come on. We're prepared.
But
how is it
right?
possible?
Sorry, Mick. We read the news.
Yeah, we pay attention to things
so
here.
Here's the thing, though, and let's keep Mick up here for a second. If you have this massive strike at the end of the month, I mean, this is talking about, then all of a sudden the question's going to be, well, am I going to start to pay more for my goods come Christmas time?
Yeah, well, by the way, Christmas goods is not the issue. It's medical supplies.
There's a lot of
will not be able to come into this country, but I actually think that Biden will solve the problem.
You think so beforehand, gets involved?
There's no way he's going to let that happen.
On October 1st, they know, as Mick said, that they're not stupid.
Right.
They know what's coming on November 5th, and they know that they have the leverage here, and you have to wonder how all of this ends up and down the East Coast. All right.
But will the voters blame Kamala Harris?
Right.
No.
Because statistically...
Yes, I think on this one, I think they would.
I know you think that.
On this
You
one,
wouldn't
I think
think,
if there's
I'm telling you.
Right. Like, that's not a prediction. It's a spoiler. They're going to get this deal done before
Donald Trump would tell you
the election.
he's going to do
Everybody
it.
That's, I think, what the
He could
Democrats
sell it
are
in
hoping.
one day.
We'll see. Mick Mulvaney, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, y'all.
Still much more ahead, by the way, here on the Hill. We are live in Louisiana in minutes. That hurricane expected to make landfall, strengthening as well. Stay with us. Live look in Louisiana. We're following it. Stay with us. Welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. Today, as you know, of course, commemorates the anniversary of the September 11th attacks 23 years ago. Tens of thousands of Americans were then inspired by those tragic events afterwards to serve in the nation, serve in the military, join our military, head overseas. Several of them who ended up serving abroad are now serving in a much different capacity as members of Congress. And joining us now is one of those, Congressman Jake Auchincloss, Democrat from the state of Massachusetts. Congressman, thanks for being with us here on the Hill. Nice to talk to you in person. I wanted to speak with you and your colleagues today because you're among those, let's just call it 35 to 45 years old, who went abroad, right? You served in Afghanistan. And I wonder today on September 11th, what goes through your mind as we see the scenes playing out at Ground Zero over at the Pentagon in Shanksville?
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course.
Every American my age or older remembers exactly where they were when they heard about the attacks of 9/11. And all of us of every age should grieve together today for those nearly 3,000 Americans who died. And we should also resolve that no terrorist anywhere in this world should be able to strike the United States homeland. And that mission was accomplished in Afghanistan through the neutralization of Osama bin Laden and by the success of the counterterrorism mission. Unfortunately, that CT mission morphed into a counterinsurgency nation-building exercise, and I was in Afghanistan as that surge happened in 2012.
Right. You were in Helmand Province,
Helmand Province, and I saw, even as a junior officer...
These are pictures of you as a quote-unquote kid, I guess you could say.
Taking me back more than a decade.
Yeah.
I was able to see in 2012 as an officer in Afghanistan, but then in 2014 as a reconnaissance officer in Panama, two different levers of American military power. One is nation building. Mm-hmm. The other is nation partnering. In Panama, we partner with Panamanian public forces to strengthen their drug interdiction efforts. And I saw that in Afghanistan, it doesn't work. You can't build a nation with the U.S. military. In Panama, it did work. You can strengthen a nation. And that needs to be the foreign policy takeaway, I think, for the next generation of national security leaders. Look at Ukraine. Ukraine is fighting to save its own democracy. We should be helping them.
What is the biggest threat as you see it? Is it, we've heard a lot from Christopher Wray, the FBI director, about the possibility of lone wolves. There are obviously bigger terrorist organizations at a much grander scale out there. And then there's nations like China, right? I think you're on the select committee.
Yes.
As you view it right now, what is the biggest threat to the United States?
The axis of authoritarianism between China, Russia, Iran, and then with North Korea and Venezuela as junior partners. And this axis has as its mandate and mission the overturning of the rules-based international order that the United States helped architect and safeguard since World War II. And I can tell you, you mentioned I'm a member of the Select Committee on China. I am utterly confident that the United States can win this contest against this access if we want to, if we believe in ourselves.
What do you mean by that?
That on both the hard left and the extreme right, we see factions that no longer believe in the American liberal order. And if the United States and if the American people subscribe to the rule of law, to free markets, to balanced budgets, to the inherent dignity of the individual, we will win.
The next commander-in-chief will either be Kamala Harris, who you're supporting, or Donald Trump, the 45th president of the United States. You see, I'm sure, classified intelligence as it relates to China. You can't discuss it. But I wonder what you think the next president should do when they get in there on day one. What should they do as it relates to the threats around the globe?
First and foremost, authorize Ukraine to use F-16s and ATACMS to strike Russian oil refining capacity. 80% of Russian oil refining capacity is
to strike Russia's oil?
Yes. So
you would tell Kamala Harris to do that?
To authorize Ukraine to use U.S.-made F-16s and ATACMS to strike Russian oil refining capacity. Putin is funding his war economy using oil revenues. And 4 of their most important refining plants are right around Moscow, well within striking distance of our precision-guided munitions. And yet Ukraine has been handcuffed, regrettably, by the Biden administration. We need to allow Ukraine to strike back and to impair Putin's ability to fund his brutal invasion of Ukraine using oil exports.
Do you think Kamala Harris would do that, would authorize that?
I hope that she won't have to, because Biden will do it before she even takes office.
I say this every time I interview you. I wish we had more time, but we got to leave it there. Congressman Jake Auchincloss, Democrat from Massachusetts. We'll do it again. New studio, right across from the Hill. Thank you, sir. All right. Of course, as we talk about 9/11 and the country today mourning and honoring what happened 23 years ago, I wonder what you all make of what you just heard from the congressman there. He obviously sees a lot, hears a lot, is involved with a lot.
Yeah, I think, especially given the congressman's record of service and talk about having skin in the game in a very real, tangible way, comes at this with a lot of credibility. I think this is someone that both parties, regardless of who ends up winning this thing, should really listen to and take his advice.
I wonder whether it would draw us deeper into the Ukraine-Russian affair if we were to allow the bombing of those oil refineries. Would that be a line too far to cross?
But he's talking about... Go ahead.
No, well, I wanted to get to you because you were in the White House the day of and the days after 9/11. Yeah. And now with us 23 years after the fact, I wonder sort of how you look back at that point in time and where you think we are and where we're headed.
Well, what concerns me more than ever is I totally agree with the congressman of what we need to do internationally. I have a different view on some things, but we're still not dealing with what's happening here. And I don't want this to be a political issue in regards to the border, but we have so many people on the terrorist watch list, which is what happened pre-9/11 of how many people wanted to kill us. And we have so many people now here that still want to kill us. And so we have to fight internationally, but we have to really, really deal with what's happening here in this country. And I do not want to make it political, but it is.
Mm-hmm. I'll give you the last word here.
I think that Ashley's right on this. You don't want to make this political, but at some point you have to, and there's just so much at risk in this. And I will say one other thing about 9/11 and about what we're hearing today that hasn't been talked about is the fact that Senator J.D. Vance did join the Marine Corps after 9/11 in service of this country. And to everybody who did, to everybody who stepped up in this country to serve after that, I remember the American flags everywhere. All we can do is say
whatever side of the aisle you are, it's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to the congressman, and we put out asks for a lot of them. And thank you to Congressman Auchincloss for coming, because as I said to him, I was in high school during 9/11. I think my senior year or something like that. And there's this group of, call it 35 to 45-year-old members of Congress who then served, whether it's J.D. Vance, Jake Auchincloss, whoever. And they are here now in Washington at all levels. All right, meantime, we continue to watch what is going on down in the Gulf of Mexico as Hurricane Francine has made landfall in Louisiana, now a Category 2 storm, so nothing to mess with there. Our Allie Bradley is live with us once again. She normally covers the border, but in Louisiana for us tonight. Allie, what are you seeing? What are you feeling? What are you experiencing there right now?
Yeah, hey, Blake, from one crisis to another, right? When you think hurricanes barreling towards Louisiana. You think New Orleans, obviously sustaining a lot of damage in 2005 from Katrina, but we know that Francine made landfall moments ago down in Morgan City, which is just about 70 miles from us. And gosh, we are really feeling those winds pick up and the rain really is coming down. We're looking at around 70-mile-an-hour gusts down here, trying to hold on to things because you're going to blow away pretty much out here at this juncture. So what they're dealing with is that rain. They are seeing some streets kind of flooding over a little bit. But what's really interesting here is they actually have a shelter-in-place advisory right now, an ordinance that is in effect, and they really want people to be off the streets. They want them in their homes, somewhere safe, because this is something that could get out of hand. We are on the east side of the hurricane's path, which is what meteorologists consider to be the dirty side of the hurricane. So they're certainly expecting to get some kind of damage here. But it's also important to note, Blake, that the damage that they sustained during Katrina was really because those levees broke. Residents that we talked to, people living here that went through Katrina, they're like, we're confident in our infrastructure in our city and what they have done to prevent that from happening again. So we'll be down here right now. We are still seeing things kind of transform and shape up to be more hurricane conditions out here in New Orleans, Blake.
Our Allie Bradley live there in New Orleans. They're laughing, Allie, because someone just waved hi. And I know this from living in Miami and having covered a million of these things. What you just saw behind Allie was a band come through, and it will pick up, it will get worse. But in the meantime, residents there kind of doing their thing as officials tell them to please stay alert and stay calm. Allie, thank you so much. All right, still to come here on the Hill. Why did President Biden put on a Donald Trump hat earlier today in Pennsylvania? What the White House is saying about that. Look at this. What is up with that? The White House has an explanation. It happened earlier today. They say for a good reason. When the Hill returns.
NewsNation Sunday. Best-selling author Bill O'Reilly spotlights America's chief executives, ranking the best to the worst.
And I'd go back and slap him.
And Bill's greatest of all time, confronting the presidents. Sunday at 9, 8 Central on NewsNation.
Ground state of North Carolina, where according to a recent poll by The Hill and Emerson College, she is leading Donald Trump by 3 in a 3-way race. So why North Carolina? Well, for one, it is one of the key swing states that we focus on constantly. 16 electoral votes up for grabs. Trump won North Carolina in 2020 by 2 points. The only Democrat, though, consider this. Think about this for a second. The only Democrat to win in North Carolina since 1976 was Barack Obama. He did it back in 2008. Here with me, Congressman from the Tar Heel State, Wiley Nickel, Democrat. Nice to see you. Thanks for being with us here on the Hill. You thought last night was a big night for her with women. Why?
Well, she had plans. She had specific policy proposals to help families, to help with the child tax credit. We got to hear from someone who sounded like a president, who was presidential, who had a real plan. And on the other hand, Donald Trump, he said he only has concepts of a plan. I heard nothing anywhere in that debate that resembled a real plan or a solution to bring our country together, to work on issues that we need to work on in Washington. It was a huge win for Vice President Harris.
So undecided voters in your state, right? The number one issue for them is the economy. Voters as a whole in your state, the number one issue for them is the economy. You know this. I don't need to tell you this, but for our audience watching us. Kamala Harris got the question last night, which is the fastball down the middle. You know it's coming right off the top of the debate. Here's what she was asked. I want to get your reaction on the other side.
When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy.
I didn't hear her say yes. Why not?
What I did hear was a plan, and I think that's really the most important part of that answer.
But how do you make the argument, though, that if you're the incumbent vice president and you can't argue that, yes, we are better off than we were in our bank accounts, in our pocketbooks, at our kitchen table 4 years ago?
Well, I just look at where we're going, and that's the information that I get here in Congress on the House Financial Services Committee. We're about to lower interest rates, finally. That's a huge turning point for our economy. We're going to be bringing down costs, and I think folks are seeing the work that we've done here over the last 4 years with the Biden-Harris administration starting to pay off in North Carolina. Inflation is moving in the right direction. It's moving down. We're going to be cutting interest rates. Those are things that are going to help in a big way in North Carolina.
You're a big supporter of President Biden. I know this, but for our audience, we know what happened in the first debate. We know what happened last night. And I wonder if there are some Americans out there who are saying, you know what? If she was that strong last night, which you say she was, why is he leading the country right now and not her?
Well,
I get that he's the president, but when you compare the two performances, I got to imagine there are some folks out there saying, wait a minute, he still has a few more months left in office.
I think he's doing the work he needs to do. He's able to focus on running through the tape over the next 6 months, and she's focusing on her campaign. I think he's certainly able to do the job, and he's doing a great job at it right now. But, my focus is on this election and making sure folks know about this incredible choice that's coming up. And we saw two totally different performances. Everyone knew that Donald Trump we were gonna bait him. And over and over and over, he took the bait. And
doesn't she, so she set the bait trap, she tried to bait him on immigration. And instead of answer the question about immigration, doesn't she owe the country some answers?
Well, I think
that's the flip to that, right?
I think we got the answers. I mean, and I think for folks who are watching what we do here in Congress, it's crystal clear. She said that as president, she would sign the most conservative border security and immigration reform bill we've ever pushed through Congress. We had a deal here in Congress that 25 Senate Republicans were willing to support, along with Democrats, and Trump killed the deal for his own personal benefit. That's the thing I'm excited about. Once we get past this election, we come back to Washington, I know we can get this done when we get Vice President Harris through this election and ready to be our next president.
Yes or no, she wins North Carolina?
Absolutely. She's ahead. She's ahead by 3 points. It is going to be incredibly close. I think in North Carolina, the battle isn't between Harris and Trump. The battle is between Kamala Harris and the couch. Getting people excited, getting people motivated. It's going to, the North Carolina is going to go to the side that is most motivated to vote. And after a performance like that at the debate, we have a ton of reasons to be excited. And I think that debate you're going to see as we talk to people made a huge difference to those people who are still on the fence, those swing voters right in the middle. It just wasn't even close. I think this was probably one of the best debate performances we've seen in our nation's history.
That's a big one, but we'll leave it there. Glad we get to do this in person. Congressman Wiley Nickel.
So
thank you, sir. All right, by the way, did you happen to see, show the image earlier today. This was, thanks again, appreciate it. This was Joe Biden earlier today in Pennsylvania. He was there, of course, for the 9/11 tributes and the ceremonies, and he was asked, he basically gave one of his hats out to a Trump supporter and put a Trump hat on for like a couple seconds and then took it off. You're laughing. What do you see here?
I see a person embodying the spirit of what they were there for, which was a show of the country coming together, having a non-political moment, and this was his way of, I think, demonstrating that when someone in the audience there said, like, would you put this hat on? And
he's not
for a few minutes.
And he's not running.
You buying it?
Well, I'm looking that he wears a hat really bad. So
that's like one of the rules of politics, right? Never put a hat on is one of the top rules in politics, no matter what side.
He looks really stupid because it's sitting up so high on the top of his head.
I could do without the photo op. But, you know, in political unity, American unity, you take a tongue-in-cheek.
So the White House says this was bipartisan unity after 9/11, and we need to get back to that. Part of what they said today. Either way, that image will be out there forever. All right, last night's debate, by the way, watched by nearly 60 million people, and while many were looking for help to decide where their vote might go, some were also looking to make a quick buck. Polymarket, which is a platform that allows users to bet on world events, featured a number of debate bets last night, including one that hit right off the top.
Kamala Harris. Let's have a good debate.
See, have fun.
Thank you.
That right there made some people some money. The odds were that it would not happen. I've said this before. They owe the American people that moment right there. We saw it again today, earlier this morning at Ground Zero.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do have to say the betting thing's real. I was saying earlier that my 15-year-old was like, we're looking, I mean, first of all, he's watching the debate.
Good on you, Mom, for letting him bet at 15 years old.
It's under my credit card. But he was like, how many times make America great again? I mean, like, it was like a thing.
By the way,
like what's the profit share agreement on it?
The odds right now sort of flipped a few points here and there. I got 10 seconds left. It basically has it as a coin flip. Coming out of last night, that's where we are?
Slightly for Harris still.
Coin flip.
Harris is surging 2 or 3 points.
I think a coin flip, yeah.
All right. Either way, it's
By the way, on
the
Monday,
margins.
it was for Trump because of all the New York Times.
I bet you $3.
This is going to swing one way or the other for 55 more days. All right, coming up, question remains, will they debate again? Donald Trump talking about that very question today. So what did he say? Leland Vittert, host of On Balance, joins us on the other side of the break. All right, welcome back here to The Hill on NewsNation. Before we say goodbye, take a listen here to what former President Trump had to say today on whether or not there could be a second presidential debate.
When a fighter has a bad fight, gets knocked out, or loses the fight, the first thing he says is, we want a rematch. So we won the debate according to every poll, every single poll. I think that, are we going to do a rematch? I just don't know. But we'll think about it.
Leland Vittert, host of On Balance. There is nothing officially on the calendar. You think we get there or no?
Look, it would be great for America if we 100%. Got there. And it used to be that there were 3 presidential debates, the Commission on Presidential Debates. Joe Biden's campaign threw that out, basically because they wanted to box out RFK from any debates. And now you have the situation where each campaign has to agree to every debate with every rule and with every moderator. That wasn't the way it existed in the past. And boy, are we now seeing how important that was, number one. And number two now, since the ABC moderators inserted themselves so much yesterday and changed the tenor of the debate, that even adds more unlikelihood that we get another one.
If you're losing, generally speaking, you want another debate. If you're winning, generally speaking, you don't want another debate. Donald Trump doesn't want another debate. Kamala Harris's team does want another debate. Do you think it's because they both believe that he believes that he's winning and she actually believes she might be down?
Or that Donald Trump is arguing and trying to hold out for better terms with another moderator, or Kamala Harris wants to declare victory even though it was a draw. There's all sorts of permutations to that. I think it's very telling, though, that both of them are so capable